As we speak, the demolition of Miami Beach's historic Deauville Hotel is underway. That is video from about 8 o'clock this morning of the building coming tumbling down. Its demise is the headline for a chronic South Florida story. Years of neglect by owners and ideas for an infusion of money and development that ended when voters opposed the changes.
One Miami Beach commissioner led the charge against the upzoning that was needed for those changes and also against turning over city property parking lots off Lincoln Road to private developers. That commissioner is Commissioner Kristen Rosen Gonzalez, and there she is. Welcome, Kristen. Good to see you.
Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is right now. Good to have you aboard. So, for people who might not live on or near Miami Beach, you pretty much single-handedly oppose this in a very loud way, framing it as David against Goliath, and conflating a lot of the development projects that were underway when some say they were very different and should not have been conflated. What was wrong with this Deauville plan?
Stephen Ross came in. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me on the show this morning. What happened with the Deauville is that there was very little public input, and we have a strong culture of historic preservation here on Miami Beach with the Save Miami Beach FAR movement in 1990, where we downzoned everything. So Miami Beach residents are not stupid, and they are well informed. And we had a billionaire, a very powerful man, Stephen Ross, come in, and he didn't really follow our public process. He didn't speak with the Miami Design Preservation League and all the other stakeholders. And he just came in, supported by the mayor, and said, we want this massive FAR increase. Right now, you can build about 500,000 square feet at the Deauville, and he was going to almost double that. I think they were adding an additional 250,000 square feet. And first of all, it was just too big, too dense. They took for granted the fact that Miami Beach has never really voted in favor of FAR increases.
So let me just stop you for 1 second, because you're talking about the project to come, when a lot of this discussion really should be what has happened to get us here, and the owners, the current owners. I hear by and large no argument that these owners allowed this property to deteriorate and have not paid any consequences for what is now a blighted city problem. And wouldn't the question be holding owners responsible for their properties and buildings so that we were not at this point to go forward? Is that something that really needs to be scrutinized by all cities with this kind of issue?
That is correct. The Meruelo family that owns the Deauville property currently owes the city of Miami Beach $4.5 million in fines. We've been in court since 2018. When Hurricane Ian hit in 2017, the Deauville had an electrical problem, and they shut it down, and they just never fixed it. And within 6 months, the building was full of mold. And many years later, by the way, commissioners pushing back, elected officials pushing back against an administration that we just couldn't seem to get anything done with the Deauville. And it was really very depressing. And we've been in court with them. We went to the county structural board to try to fight this demolition by neglect. And I think Champlain Towers amplified everything. And today we saw a demolition by neglect. And thank goodness we won this referenda, because what would the presumption have been after this, or the precedent that now you can demolish the Raleigh Hotel or the Fontainebleau or the Versailles, any of our other famous hotels? People loved the Deauville, and there was an overestimation that people just wanted to get rid of an eyesore. But what our electorate really wants to see is the Deauville renovated and some sort of new project that respects historic preservation in place.
But Commissioner, isn't that indeed the consequence? Because right now, the owners have no consequence. Isn't that the message? The exact message you don't want to send? Isn't that the message to developers or to owners, that you can just let your property rot? And here there is a developer coming in with a plan that can't do it. Sorry?
No, because they were defeated at the ballot box, Glenna. I mean, they have to go in front of the Historic Preservation Board now. Nobody can just go in there and develop whatever they want, because in Miami Beach we have a presumption of replication.
Exactly.
So now,
I'm talking about, isn't the message, to your point in the earlier question, isn't there a message to people who own properties now that you can get away without consequences and let your property sit there for as long as it needs to sit until property values rise and you can sell it without consequence for allowing that blight? That is the message this destruction and demolition has just sent.
it very well could be, because an independent structural engineer went into the Deauville and said this structure is unsafe, and then we tried to fight it at the county structural board, and they said, and they refused it. So yes, this could potentially happen with other buildings, and we just don't have any. And this is the post Champlain Towers world that we live in, and it's a very scary place for historic preservation. I keep reminding everybody that these historic buildings are our postcard. It's what makes us famous. It's what differentiates us from any other city in the world, from Tampa or Jupiter. I mean, people want to come to Miami Beach because of these old historic buildings. And hopefully the judicial system moving forward will see that too, because we can't, judges are put in a very precarious place, because you go in front of them, and if they vote to not demolish something and something happens, then that would be blood on their hands. But we can actually demand that they rebuild parts of the Deauville, that they rebuild these historic properties.
Kristen, explain that. Through the Historic Preservation Board, you can now demand that somehow the Deauville, the design, some or all of it, be replicated?
Yes, they can.
And who's going to do that?
When an application is submitted, it has to go in front of the Historic Preservation Board. And it really does now all rest in the hands of a Historic Preservation Board. But we do have a presumption of replication, and that would have to be reversed by a court. So right now, they could demand that the Deauville be rebuilt. And the Meruelos know this, and they're going to have to lower the price of this property, which they were planning on selling to developer Stephen Ross for $500 million. They are not going to get that FAR increase. They are not going to be able to just implode and destroy the Deauville with no consequences. There will be consequences for this, and we've fought it. The city of Miami Beach has pushed back pretty hard. We've tried and failed.
Yeah.
It was a failure.
Well, it was a top-down effort, to be sure, but then you sort of got your people together and you rose up against it. Steve Ross spent $1.9 million. You spent $30,000. So congrats on a victory, but it's still unclear what's going to happen to that property. So anyway, Kristen Rosen Gonzalez, thank you for joining us. We appreciate